Yeah, it was a great honor for me to be able to be here. And as what I mentioned yesterday in the physiology meeting, when I was kids, I was watch lots of movies from Russia, and like Lenin in 1918. So because of this, when I come to Moscow, the very important mission for me is come to Red Square to see Lenin. So I thank one of the students who is here.
Probably not here.
Yes. Yes. So I feel great honor to be able to see Lenin with my own eyes. So I'm really proud of myself. And of course, we also learn quite a song of Russian song, but this is not my time to show my talents to sing the song of Russian. So today, and actually I update my slides because this morning I have great conversation with our chair, Dr. Mashan. Yes, so he's not in the audience?
I'm afraid not.
Oh, I'm sorry for that. Actually, I prepared the slides for him because he interested in something else. So then I update some of this information. He also told me that you're not necessary to present within 1 hour, and you should feel freedom to extend the time. But I still try to control within 1 hour. But I really want to have interactions. So I have several episodes for my presentation. I would like to invite you to give the question. Because basically, most of our funding is based on the animal models. And as also I discussed yesterday with Dima, as well as Dima's students, all the models, whether that's really reflect for the nature of disease or the human physiology is questionable. So all this discovery must be re-evaluated by the clinicians, clinical doctors. So that's, I'm very humble for all our fundings. So I also encourage you to ask a question or challenge me, or we could collaborate to address some of this funding, whether that is truth and whether that is useful information for our patients. So as Michael, Mihail, or several pronunciations, that's difficult for me as well, to introduce that I'm also a scientist of Canadian Blood Services. And so I feel very great honor to be able to be here to share what our funding with you. So this is our University of Toronto, and every year there is quite a bit of this laureate of Nobel Prize to give our students to present in this building. So this is our physiologist. So they discovered the insulin that be demonstrated to be pretty useful for diabetes. That's for a while. And so this is our hospital. We're thinking that what we do is angel to killing this disease, these monsters, this disease. Our hospital is really in the downtown of Toronto. Okay, so what my laboratory in the last 16 years, probably even more than that, let's say 20 years, is mainly focused for this small cell in the blood we call the platelet. So this cell was generated from bone marrow of megakaryocyte, but recently people mentioned the problem also a significant amount of them can be generated from lung as well. So the platelet function today has be discovered has more and more functions. So we think that this is versatile cells. They play central role in hemostasis, stop the bleeding. But this cell also express significant amount of adhesion molecules or molecules related with inflammation. So therefore, we thinking it's a part of innate immune system, and they express toll-like receptor, P-selectin, CD40 ligand, TGF-beta, etc., and also may modulate adaptive immune responsive. they also contribute for the lymphatic vessel development as well. So they involved in the new vessel growing and also play critical role in the early of atherosclerosis and the later stage of thrombosis. That could be the major reason to leading to killing most of us. So platelet also contain large amount of serotonin in it, so therefore affect our emotion as well. So this is a review article we published last year in Critical Review Clinical Laboratory Science. If you're interested, you could read this. This is a pretty long review articles. So basically, we summarize today the information today regarding the function of the platelet in the physiology or pathology conditions, including in hemostasis and thrombosis. As what I also mentioned, they are part of innate immune system and contribute for adaptive immune responses. So contribute for immunoglobulin class switch and also multiple immune responses. And also, you have more platelet, you have more easy to develop atherosclerosis. As what I also mentioned, the platelet contributed to separation of the circulation system between the blood circulation and the lymphatic vessel system. Contributed for angiogenesis, and recently it be highlighted because in the clinical trial for the protection of cardiovascular disease, they give the large amount of the people to use a low dose of the aspirin. So as we understand that, so we just mentioned to you, Dr. Manshan, yeah, we just mentioned that you give me freedom to extend my the time of presentation. I appreciate that. So in this large group of amount of the population study, they found that the aspirin, you need a high dose. High dose could inhibit the inflammation, but a low dose may only interaction with the platelet. You could find that the patients not only just decrease the risk for the cardiovascular disease, but in this group of the population, markedly decrease the malignant tumor. So at least 24% to 72%, based on which trial you see. So that is a markedly decrease. The reason we still not fully understood, Blood asked me to write a review article regarding that how this aspirin and how platelet could cross interaction with tumor cells affect the malignancy. I do not know whether that is related with leukemia. So leukemia is sort of special, the tumors. And also platelet contribute for the liver regeneration, as many of the surgeons knows. So in the liver, if you remove the 30% or half of the liver, you need in too long time, the liver size will go into the resume the original size. So this process also need platelet contribution, even with still not fully understood what happens there. I reviewed one of the blood review article regarding of this, and the mechanism is still not fully understood, but obviously platelet contribute for that. And in the last few years, scientists understand that platelet adhesion and aggregation at the site of injury considering as the first wave of hemostasis. The second wave is blood coagulation. So these two collaborate together, form a core part of growing hemostatic plaque. This core part. In the top part, platelet probably not necessary to be fully activated. So one of the information I wanted to introduce, two information here, is from my laboratory. One, we found that once the vessel injured, actually, we think there is one wave, is a protein wave. What it means, the protein deposition to the vessel wall. This including plasma fibronectin play important role to stop bleeding. Of course, at this time, von Willebrand factor will also anchor to the collagen at this stage. We think this is a protein wave. This wave is even earlier than classical the wave of platelet adhesion and aggregation. I also would like to deliver the message That's original the funding from Denisa Wagner laboratory when I was a postdoc fellow there. We found that without fibrinogen, platelets still able to aggregation. You probably don't believe it, but in the fibrinogen patients and also the mice, knockout of fibrinogen, platelets still able to aggregation. But keep in mind, you cannot induce aggregation in use a routine the procedure. So what you need to do, you draw the blood, do not put anticoagulant in it, because there is no fibrinogen, there is no fibrin. The blood will not clot. You're still able to do the platelet aggregation. You could see platelet able to aggregation without the fibrinogen. However, if you put anticoagulant there, no matter it's divalent cation cleaters, put EDTA or sodium citrate or heparin or the lipoprotein, this thrombin inhibitor, you could remove this phenomenon. So that means this the X ligand mediated platelet aggregation need reasonable divalent cation and also probably need thrombin signal as well. So, but basically in vivo, without the fibrinogen, or in vitro, without the fibrinogen, as long as you did not put anticoagulant there, platelet able to aggregation independent from fibrinogen. So this is another new information I would like to deliver to you as well as all of the world, that we call the fibrinogen independent platelet aggregation. So all this system contribute to form a hemostatic plaque, which is stop the bleeding tendency. But if this is overaction, that could lead into vessel occlusion, that could lead into heart attack and stroke. To simplify that the last picture, we understand that two receptor on the platelet surface adhesion molecules, GP1B complex, which is von Willebrand factor receptor, or the fibrinogen receptor contribute significantly for this platelet adhesion and aggregation. As what I mentioned, this theory has been established for more than 50 years until when I was working in Denisa Wagner's laboratory, use of fibrinogen deficient animals, and subsequently working at the University of Toronto, we found that without fibrinogen, platelets still able to aggregation. Because this GP1B complex and the GP2B3A is very important in the platelet adhesion and aggregation, and also because these two proteins are the dominant, one of the major cell, the platelet receptor on the platelet surface. This has 60 to 80,000 copies per platelet. So this is about 25,000 copies on each of the platelet. There has a large amount of them on the platelet surface. So these two receptor is also the major target antigens in autoimmune thrombocytopenia as well as in the alloimmune thrombocytopenia, like in ITP patients or in the post-transfusion purpura as well as the fetal and the neonatal alloimmune thrombocytopenia. I will introduce it in more detail later on. So this is von Willebrand factor receptor. So after the interaction with von Willebrand factor, this molecule could deliver signal to the cell, cause the platelet activation. In the end, that could lead to GP2B3A or beta-3 integrin to be activated. So this inside-out signaling leading to the beta-3 integrin activation. In the ITP patients, it's about 20 to 40% of the patients have antibody target the GP1B alpha complex. Many is on the GP1B alpha. As what I mentioned, GP2B3A is one of the most abundant protein expressed on the platelet surface. It's about 17% of the total cell membrane protein is GP2B3A. So about the 70 to 80% of ITP patients, all the patients has antibody, 70 to 80% of them has antibody against this protein. So this protein also able to deliver outside in and inside out signaling. So, but the signal pathway are different from the GP1B alpha. So therefore, so that's also so this the signal be delivered. So therefore, we thinking So antibody bonding to these two groups may have different consequences because the signal pathway is different. These two proteins belong to two irrelevant protein families. So therefore, the function difference, antibody bonding to them may also have different consequences. So this early work by Dr. Niswan group, the elegant work, they found that anti-GPMB antibody, if you remove the FC portion out, they're still able to cause thrombocytopenia, but not occurs for the antibody against the GP2B3A or beta-3 integrins. Therefore, we hypothesize that gamma globulin, if they, through the mechanism, block the FC receptor, so that we're not working for this group of the antibody mediated thrombocytopenia. So IVIG, probably other therapy as well. So then we did the experiment in the mouse model. So we received the monoclonal antibody from Dr. Niswan, as well as our own generate a bunch of antibody as well. We found that if you treat the thrombocytopenia caused by antibody against GPMB alpha, so most of the ITP caused by this monoclonal antibody, IVIG does not work with them. Majority of them. Only one antibody, we still do not know what happens. Anti-GPMB alpha is a response to IVIG therapy, but most of them is not. So then it's interesting. So the work from Milwaukee group, almost immediately, so like once we after our paper published it, so it's about within a year, this group to do a retrospective study, they found that our story is likely true because they found the patients has antibody against GPMB alpha is not a response to IVIG therapy. They introduced our study pretty in detail. So then we studied the large amount of the group from China, actually cross the whole China, from east part to northwest part. So that's a significant population, a Russian population there as well. So for the ITP study, basically we found that IVIG indeed not very sensitive to treat antibody against GPMB alpha. So not all of them, but at least twice less sensitive as antibody against GP2B3A. So therefore, if we found the patient is resistant to IVIG therapy, we need to ask them, so whether this patient has antibody against GPMB alpha or anti-GP2B3A, but they probably cause the platelet activation as well. So that is, this is a human study. So we also found that steroid therapy, IVIG, the steroid therapy is also not sensitive to patient has anti-GPMB alpha antibody. So the mechanism we have not fully elucidated, but it seems to me that is the case, that once the patient has anti-GPMB alpha, it's difficult to be treated by steroid as well as IVIG. So this work published in the American Journal of Hematology in 2012. So therefore, this work suggests that ITP induced by anti-GPMB alpha antibody may be mediated by a mechanism we call the FC-independent mechanism, and many may be refractory to IVIG and steroid therapy. These two are the first-line therapy for ITP at this moment. So if you're interested, you could read some of our publication regarding of this work. So then we further develop the monoclonal antibody against GPMB alpha and the GP2B3A to further study what's the mechanism involved for this FC-independent platelet clearance. What we found that once the anti-GPMB alpha antibody bonding to the platelet, no matter murine platelet or human platelet, you could cause the platelet activation. You could detect them, use the P-selectin. And but if the antibody against GP2B3A, you were not able to see this phenomenon. And some of the human the antibody, some of the antibody, once binding to the human platelet, because the human platelet do have Fc receptor, so in this scenario, so anti-GP2B3A could also cause the platelet activation through the platelet surface Fc receptor, because you can block the platelet Fc receptor, use IV 0.3, this monoclonal antibody, so then you could diminish this phenomenon. So we also found that in the patient, the anti-GPMB alpha the antibody, you can see the P-selectin level is significantly higher than the patient has antibody against GP2B3A. But I would like to mention that patient has antibody against GP2B3A also has a reasonable higher activation compared with normal healthy platelet. Suggests that significant human anti-GP2B3A antibody probably also able to cause the platelet activation as well as subsequently we will say platelet desylation. So as what I mentioned, that after platelet activation, so this neuraminidase, we see significant desylation. The platelet surface lose sialitic acid, as you can see, that's induced by different monoclonal antibody here. So this process can be inhibited by neuraminidase inhibitor. This is one of the chemicals you could see that could inhibit this platelet desylation. So that's both mouse and the human platelet has a similar effect. Only difference is because human platelet surface has Fc receptor, but mouse platelet surface do not have Fc receptor. So therefore, human has additional reason could cause platelet activation as well as desylation. But in this scenario, so you probably IVIG could be useful for this part, but we're not working for this part. So this is, as you could see, anti-GPMB alpha antibody could cause a significant desylation as compared with anti-GP2B3A. So then what happens? Why this desylation occurs? That we found that after antibody against GPMB alpha, you could see induce platelet activation, induce neuraminidase translocation from alpha granules come to the platelet surface. You can see that. So once they come to the platelet surface, they start to cut this sialitic acid, so then leading to the platelet desylation. So then we found that this neuraminidase translocation, as this morning I discussed with our director here, that you could detect this neuraminidase on the platelet surface, use a certain antibody on it. You could see that anti-GPMB alpha could induce the neuraminidase come to the platelet surface. And also we found that there is a significant positive correlation between platelet activation and neuraminidase expression as well as platelet desylation. So then all this work has to be done in vitro, in the outside. What happened in vivo, in the animals? We found that if you inject this antibody against GPMB alpha, you could see induced the in vivo platelet desylation that could easily to be detected by RCA as well as the P-selectin. So anti-GP2B3A in the mice, you're not able to induce the platelet activation and desylation. That is because murine platelet do not have Fc receptor. But anti-GP1B alpha, you can see markedly platelet activation and desylation. So this basically show the time. Once the antibody come to the inside of the mice, 30 minutes, 60 minutes later, you can see markedly this effect. So this is the flow cytometry data basically show the same story as what I mentioned earlier. So there is a very important point. As clinicians, we know that usually the patient antibody are very low in the blood circulation. It's very difficult to be detected even, because the amount of autoantibody, the level is not high. So then it's a puzzle for the physician how this small amount of antibody, which is different from what we're doing in the animals. In animal, we inject a reasonable amount of antibody in it. So how this small amount of antibody could cause such a significant consequences and cause the patient suffering from the thrombocytopenia. What we found here is once anti-GPMB alpha antibody causes platelet activation, there is a positive feedback loop. So that could enhance this situation. You could see that once the platelet activation could cause the platelet desylation. Desylation could further cause the platelet activation. So there exists the positive feedback loop. That could explain why small amount of antibody in the patient could cause a significant platelet clearance. And we found that in the FC receptor blocker is unable to significantly decrease anti-GPMB alpha mediated platelet phagocytosis. And this phagocytosis required FC. They not necessarily need FC portion, but they do need dimer of the antibody, need FAB2. And this is what I mentioned, this positive feedback loop occurs. That could explain in the ITP patients why small amount of antibody binding to small amount of GPMB alpha, because they cause the platelet activation, cause the neuraminidase translocation, and cause the desylation. Desylation further to induce platelet activation to then drive the platelet activation more and the desylation more, so then cause the consequences. So most of this desylation we found is predominantly occur on the GPMB alpha subunit. So this data showed that part. So the question is whether this ashimoral receptor in the liver could contribute for anti-GPMB alpha mediated platelet clearance. So basically we use this blocker for the ashimoral receptor to see these consequences. Basically, this ashimoral receptor blocker, ashiofortrin, is unable to block anti-GP2B3A mediated thrombocytopenia, but can significantly ameliorate the thrombocytopenia induced by anti-GPMB alpha antibody. To keep in mind, this is toxic to the liver, so therefore cannot use that as the therapy for the human patients. So sorry for that, but we do experiment, it's fine. We found that if you block the macrophage, you can see most of this platelet clearance will go through the ashimoral receptor in the liver cell, in the livers. So this is the liver. You can see the platelet trapped here and cleared in the liver if you have anti-GPMB alpha mediated thrombocytopenia. And that's indeed, if you knock out the ashimoral receptor, you could see the platelet clearance is ameliorated. So therefore, indeed, ashimoral receptor involved in this process. Then the question is how to treat these patients. So we found that neuraminidase inhibitors, you could able to inhibit this thrombocytopenia and able to inhibit all these different monoclonal antibody induced thrombocytopenia. So this work published in 2015 in this Nature Communications, and I'm the corresponding author. This is a free access journal. You are free to access to this paper. So most of this work was in the animals. So this is my colleagues from the hospital. I'm the platform director there. The very well recognized the scientists working for ITP. They believe the humans are sort of different from the animals, which we agree, because we do not have tail, right? Yeah. So then the question is whether our finding is useful for the human patients. This is one of the unfortunate human. So the patient from University of Toronto, the Sunnybrook Hospital. This patient has a long time ITP symptoms, and in the last time they come to the hospital, there's a little bit of bleeding once they clean the teeth. So then the doctor first gives steroid therapy. They found not able to decrease the bleeding. So then they give them IVIG. Then they found that the patient not able to decrease the bleeding. So then they transfuse the patient with platelet, the platelet also immediately be cleared. So not able to rescue the patient bleeding. The patient then later on start to cough the blood. So that's bleeding from the lung. In the end, the patient died because of uncontrollable bleeding. Even they give the activated factor 7, still not able to stop the bleeding. Patient passed away. It's a sort of unfortunate. So after the patient passed away, one of the physician there, that's already patient already passed 3 months later. One of the physician, they remember a few years ago, once the training in my laboratory, I introduced to them that the man has a different type of ITP. So then they asked the question whether this patient cannot be treated by steroid and IVIG is caused by that type of special type of the ITP that you mentioned a few years ago. I say, do you have patient blood sample? They say yes, they do have. They give me a little bit, like 500 microliters, only a small patient's plasma remaining. We found these patients do not have antibody against GP2B3A, do not have anti-beta 3 antibody, but they had the pretty reasonable amount of antibody against GPMB alpha. And this GPMB alpha also able to block von Willebrand effect interaction with GPMB alpha. So that you could see the platelet degradation if you incubation with the patient sera with the normal the blood donor induce the platelet degradation. You could see that's inhibited von Willebrand effect immediate platelet degradation. So therefore, these patients, we thinking not only just induce the thrombocytopenia, but because of this antibody can block von Willebrand effect GPMB alpha interaction, so that enhance the severity of bleeding disorder. So then leading people to pass away. Sorry for that. And at that time, I'm also sorry that the doctor do not know there is a neuraminidase inhibitor probably able to rescue the patient's life. They do not know. They did not record about that. And of course, we have not finished the clinical trial, and we cannot force the patient to use this. That's also the other ethical issues. So then we get one fortune patients from China. This paper published in Planet. So this patient is resistant to steroid therapy and also IVIG therapy. But then they say, okay, have you published the paper regarding the neuraminidase inhibitor may be useful. So then they treat this patient with Tamiflu. So then the patient platelet number increased. So the patients, it was rescued. So now our hospital, St. Michael's Hospital, we started clinical trial. We try to recruit around 39 to 40 patients, and to study whether Tamiflu is useful to treat ITP. So then there is another study from Italy. So they found that they did not see significant difference between anti-GPMB alpha antibody versus GP2B3A. So this is the patient data. But if you study this data carefully, you will find that in the anti-GPMB alpha positive, these patients is about twice of the tendency for the platelet clearance in the liver. And the platelet clearance in the liver, they found that there is a significantly resistant to the therapy, fourth line therapy. So therefore, I would think this data suggests that our animal model is sort of true, but the patient's number is not enough. So that's, I appreciate this morning our director mentioned that we probably could do an international group, pull all these patients together, probably more easy to see the phenomenon, this phenomenon. So another, the clinical work was done in my former medical university. We try to simplify, and also as this we discussed this morning. So we study the antibody against the GPMB alpha and GP2B3A, as well as detect the platelet desilation. We also did not see significant difference between anti-GPMB alpha and GP2B3A because the number of the patients are limited. But as you could see here, if patient has anti-GPMB alpha, there has a tendency of a higher platelet dilation. You could see that could detect by either the RCA or use ECL, that is another lectin. You could use this flow cytometry to detect them. That seems to be relatively simple. So anti-GPMB alpha, you could see there is a tendency, but because the number of the patients is limited, we're not able to reach to the statistical difference. However, you could see this is CR means completely response, R means response, NR means not response. You could see for the therapy, first-line therapy, steroid, and IVIG therapy, this therapy, you could see the non-response, the patients has significant higher of platelet dilation. That could be detected by either this and this. I would thinking either of this detection maybe has equally useful for the diagnosis or the prognosis. So basically, that's not a responder has a significant higher platelet dilation. So this is a human patient. And even more interestingly, for many of the hematologists here, you could see quite other the thrombocytopenia, like not only just ITP, in some of the rheumatic disease and the MDS, as well as other the thrombocytopenia condition, you could see the platelet dilation also pretty high. The question is whether we could use neuraminidase inhibitor to treat these patients if they have very low platelet count and also patient has bleeding tendency. We do not know, but this is an open question for all of you, and you probably could think about using neuraminidase to see whether it could improve the platelet number. So this work also published in the Journal of Hematology and Oncology. This is a reasonably high impact journal in the field, the hematology and oncology. It's open access journal. So hopefully this information is useful to leading to the future, the patient diagnosis and the treatment. So I would like to take a few questions here. Yes, please, yeah.
So did you by any chance look at, when you have this anti-GP1B antibodies, did you check for the level of expression of GP1B after antibody binding? I mean, just to know whether...
Good question.
So this might lead to shedding of GP1B and then increase the appearance of the platelets.
Yes, so this is a good question. You probably translate in the Russian.
Та же самая синтезация, которая ведет к выходу нейроминидазы и процессам диссиалирования, она же ведет к стимуляции АДАМС-17, протеиназы, которая может отрезать гликопротеин 1Б совсем. И может ли это вносить вклад?
Yeah, we did see there is some tendency for the GPMB shedding, but it seems to me that is not markedly drop in many of this scenario. But I would not say that will not occur. So that's they do have some tendency there. Any other question from our clinicians, our doctors? Yeah, that's good. So that means clear, right? Now, hopefully this is interesting story is clear for you. So basically, we found that if the patient, if you platelet has more dilation, you will be difficult to be treated. This patient may be not easy to be treated by steroid therapy or the IVIG therapy. So this, the next story, so is for our director, because this morning we discussed, and seems to me this has not been published, but we thinking we will submit to blood relatively soon. What we found that platelet GPMB alpha is required for TPO generation from the liver. So this may be pretty surprising for you. And this also by accident observed from us. So TPO can be generated mainly from the liver. So once the platelet number higher, the platelet could clear the TPO. TPO is a thrombopoietin, which is important for the platelet generation, right? Everybody knows the TPO. TPO could induce the platelet generation from the bone marrow. If you have more platelet, maybe the interaction with the TPO, so clear the more TPO through the platelet. So then that could decrease TPO, decrease the stimulation for the platelet generation. So this is a negative feedback loop to control the platelet generation. You have more platelet, has less TPO in the blood circulation. So that is one way for the TPO level regulation. We found by accidentally in the GPMB alpha deficient mice, the TPO level is 2 to 3 times less than normal to animals. Well, so then you say, okay, that's is exciting observation, but is mice. The heterozygous, they express the 50% of GPMB alpha. You can see TPO level is in the middle. And most importantly, we're thinking that in the Bonner-Thulia syndrome patients, the patients do not have GPMB alpha, has a small amount of GPMB alpha. You could see that the TPO level also significant decrease. So this decrease is not because of the platelet clearance enhanced. So all this data suggests that it's not because of clearance, but rather is the TPO generation and the protein release is decreased. You could see that the TPO mRNA from the liver is decreased. So then we also remove the GPMB alpha. This terminal is outside the extracellular domain. We found this mice also has less TPO. So basically, the outside, the GPMB alpha is required for TPO generation. So we also found that if you have a platelet transfusion, you give a Y-type platelet, normal platelet transfused to the knockout mice, you can see the TPO level has been escalated, but not if you transfuse the knockout mice, so that does not help. We found that the wild type, but not GPMB alpha platelet can stimulate the liver hepatocytes for TPO generation. This you could see that's uptake by hepatocytes, and also the TPO level is decreased. If you give the knockout platelet incubation with the liver cell. But if normal platelet interaction with the liver cells, you could see that drive the TPO increase, the level increase. That's mRNA as well as the protein as well. So we also found that desylation of Y-type platelet, but not this extracellular domain removed platelet or knockout platelet can induce the TPO generation. Seems to me that GPMB alpha is involved. But what that's related with, this is general understanding, the GPMB alpha and the TPO generation. What that related with our ITP patients. So this is what we show you, that monoclonal antibody or the polyclonal antibody against GPMB alpha could inhibit the GPMB, the platelet interaction with hepatocytes, inhibit TPO generation. So therefore, my speculation is, in the ITP patients, if you have antibody against GPMB alpha, probably you could decrease TPO generation. That could be another reason leading to this patient to be not easy to be treated. Hopefully this story is useful for our clinical part of work. So this is another piece of work, because the time is limited. I will not give more detail regarding of this. We found that desylated platelet could induce immune tolerance. So this is a very important fundamental shift, because the platelet has been demonstrated to be pro-inflammation and pro-immune response. So we found that desylated platelet actually is good to the opposite side, could induce immune tolerance. So that's leading to because the desylated platelet target the liver and also gut, induce immune tolerance to any protein associated with antigen. This is important for our hematologists, because we treat hemophilia patients. we give them factor 9, factor 8, right? But in many of the scenario, the patient may generate antibody against the factor 8 or factor 9. So whether we could give factor 8 or factor 9, transfect them to platelet, and then use the decylated platelet to induce tolerance. So therefore, this not only this platelet can stop bleeding better, but also could prevent the subsequent immune response against the hemophilia following the therapy. I would think this is pretty important. This work also invited to give an oral talk in the hot topics in the Golden Research Conference this year in Italy. So because this is a hospital of the children, so I heard from Michael, so I would also introduce something related with children. So that's another disease we call the fetal and the neonatal alloimmune thrombocytopenia. Basically, is a mother during the pregnancy generate antibody target the fetal platelet. Basically, the fetal has a gene from the father, right? The father and the mother, not the protein sometimes is not identical, particularly in the platelet sulfate GP2B3A beta-3 integrants. So then that could induce the mother generate antibody to target them. So mechanism, we still not fully understood how this immune tolerance was broken during the pregnancy, but this is a pretty severe disease, caused lots of the severe thrombocytopenia, particularly intracranial hemorrhage. So as you could see, that's some people say that's a muffin, the blueberry muffin children. So it frequently occurs in the intracranial hemorrhage. The mechanism we still not fully understood. So the reason for this is the mother, this maybe the fetus antigen stimulate mother immune system generate antibody, that the antibody cross the placenta through the neonatal Fc receptor. That is also one of the contribution from my group. We found that FcRn is absolutely required for this disease. And the neonatal Fc receptor from the baby side controlled the mother antibody transplacenta transportation. This concept also has general contribution for immunology because the neonatal Fc receptor from the baby side controlled the mother antibody to the baby side, because this is very important for the baby develop their immune system. One of the puzzle, the phenomenon in all of the world is we found most of the patients has been reported patient has antibody against the beta-3 integrin, but very few of them, only 6 to 8 cases, human cases report that has antibody against the GPMB alpha, which is very different from autoimmune thrombocytopenia as what I mentioned earlier. And also, this is not because of the polymorphism, the frequency occurs in the human population less than that. So therefore, we have several hypotheses. One possibility is mother during pregnancy cannot develop immune response to the fetal platelet GPMB alpha. Sorry, let me to close the door. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry for that. Yeah. So second possibility is, so the disease may be too mild to be observed by clinicians, so therefore we needn't care about it. The third possibility is disease may be too severe, for example, cause miscarriage, so therefore doctor not able to see them. So in the human population, up to 50% of fertilized egg is not able to develop to be a healthy baby. So the mechanism we do not know, but we do not know whether some of them is because of this antibody against GPMB alpha. So we developed this fetal neonatal alloimmune thrombocytopenia model and compare the mother immune response against beta-3 integrin and the GPMB alpha antibodies. We found that if you give the mother significant amount of antigen, like 10 times 10 to the 8 platelet, Y-type platelet, mother able to generate antibody. So antibody titer, once comparable with beta 3 integrants, so then we want to study compare them the disease. So what we found that once mother get anti-GPMB alpha antibody, actually it's difficult to get a baby. This is very interesting story. I first asked one of the students originally from Tehran, from Iran. So, but he growing in Canada for a while. So all the laboratory doubt that this student told me, well, this is a pretty bad project. You ask me to do the animal model for fetal neonatal immune thrombocytopenia to test this one. So I say, why this is a bad project? He said that I cannot get any mice for 6 months. He did not have any mice to study. So therefore cannot count the platelet number. There is no mice, how to count the platelet number. So then he said, this is not a good project to do. So then I say, if you're not happy for that project, you could give up. Then we switch to other project. So then student then working for other stuff. So then another student comes. I ask another student, could you please repeat that's Dr. Salvage Hiron, his experiment to see whether you also not able to generate the pops for these mice. If that is the case, probably there's something interesting to see. Then he told me that yes, working for the several months, they found also difficult to generate the mice. Only very few of them able to survive. More than 83% of the mother cannot deliver any pups. Keep in mind that mice is not like human. Each of the pregnancy, they can deliver 6 to 12 pups, 6 to 12 mice. So these mice, more than 83% of them cannot deliver any pups. So that means very severe. So then what happens there is, once the mother has antibody against GPMB alpha, all the mice is going to like that. So this is control. The baby mice, they're growing pretty well, but this mice is dead. Most of them dead. So they're not able to be survived. So then what's the reason for these mice to die? So what we found that this placenta has significant fibrin deposition there. So lots of the thrombus in the placenta. So that's basically placenta is difficult to transfer the mother. This is a healthy one. So mother blood nutrition could cross placenta to the baby side. But if the mother has anti-GPMB alpha antibody, these vessels, most of them be filled by fibrin, thrombus form there, the mother nutrition cannot go to the baby side, so therefore the baby died. Then the question is how? How this thrombus formation in the placenta? As what I mentioned earlier, antibody bound GPMB alpha may cause platelet activation. As you see here, that indeed could cause the microplatelet aggregates here. And you could also see that significant phosphatidylcholine expression on the surface. Michael will be interested for this story. So, and furthermore, if you in the perfusion chamber, if you give the antibody against GPMB alpha, you could see the fibrin very easy to form. This is different from the control, the IgG. So that's anti-GPMB alpha cause the GPM deliver the outside-in signaling through the GPMB alpha, cause the PS exposure on the platelet surface. That could lead to cell-based thrombin generation and generate a large amount of blood coagulation. So then that could damage the placenta, leading to the miscarriage. So then the question, can we treat this non-classical, the miscarriage with IVIG or anti-FC receptor? The answer is yes. IVIG able to do this work, and also anti-FcRn actually. And the reason I want to introduce anti-FcRn here is because IVIG is working, but IVIG is expensive. Anti-FcRn could specifically working for FcRn, so therefore you need a large amount of this immunoglobulin. Could be cheaper and efficient therapy for the future. But there is no clinical trial yet. But to my understand, a couple of companies started working for this following our earlier publications. So therefore, conclusion, first part regarding the autoimmune thrombocytopenia, anti-GPMB-alpha antibody can induce platelet activation, neuraminidase translocation, and platelet desylation. This, the pathway can occur independent from FC and FC receptor interaction. And anti-GP2B3A, some of this antibody can also induce platelet desylation, but that's you need FC receptor on the platelet surface to do this work. And desylated platelet can be cleared in the liver, not in the spleen. So therefore, if you splenectomy, remove the patient's spleen out, probably not help that much. But you, of course, you cannot remove patient liver out, right? As long as you want to cure the patients. If you remove the liver out, the patient cannot survive. But remove the spleen, you may. This is through the Ashimoto receptor-mediated mechanism. ITP induced by anti-GPMB-alpha antibody, many may be refractory to IVIG therapy and steroid therapy. So therefore, detect this neuraminidase on the surface or the desylation on the platelet the surface may be useful biomarker for ITP diagnosis and also prognosis as well. And the neuraminidase inhibitor, like Tamiflu, that has been regularly used to anti-Florence virus, that probably is used for therapy to treat these refractory patients. And as what I mentioned, anti-GPMB-alpha antibody may also inhibit TPO generation from the liver. So that could give additional difficulty to control this type of patients. Regarding the fetal neonatal alloimmune thrombocytopenia, the scenario is anti-GPMB-alpha may lead into the thrombus formation in the placenta, so then cause the miscarriage. And of course, so then we could use IVIG as well as anti-FcRn probably able to inhibit this process. This part of work has been published in Journal of Clinical Investigation in 2011. So this work was done by my PhD students. There's a former PhD student as another PhD student in the laboratory, and also postdoc fellows in the laboratory. And also that we need the collaboration within the laboratory, and she working with me, working for the clinical trial for the ITP. So Dr. Ruggieri and Dr. Jerry Well provide us GPMB-alpha deficient mice. Dr. Richard Hines provide us beta-3 deficient mice. Dr. Niswand provide us some monoclonal antibody against GPMB-alpha. And we also develop lots of mouse and mouse antibody as well. Karen Huffmaster helped us to understand this platelet desylation, and also this our Chinese collaborators study for the clinical part for the ITP. So this is my group. So working for the ITP is this student, and she published this Nature Communication regarding platelet desylation. And this gentleman generated lots of monoclonal antibody. She found that in the ITP patients, they not only has a CD4 T regular cell, also has a CD8 T regular cell, could also involve for the ITP, and particularly for that CD8 T regular cell help steroid therapy. So that's it's interesting. She demonstrated that GPMB-alpha is required for TPO generation for the liver, the platelet triggering the liver generation. This gentleman working for shield-dependent platelet activation, he's from Tajikistan, from Russia, and some other people may also has a background. And this gentleman was graduate from France. Yeah, he has he published another Nature communication paper regarding the NK cells could also lead into the miscarriage as well. That paper I would like to transfer to our director. So this gentleman to study that's plasma fibronectin, that's mediate, that's protein wave of hemostasis. And he's excellent people to publish that work. And this gentleman now already as assistant professor in the University of Michigan. And these two ladies is from Dublin. So basically it's from all of the world. I also encourage you, if you're interested in working for this disease, no matter platelet physiology or thrombocytopenia, let me know. So we're probably able to find a room for you to do the research in my laboratory. So this is, I met myself. So this photo also met myself. This is Niagara Falls. If you come to Toronto, you have a good chance to see this. It's one of the nature beauty there. Thank you.